I am Oliver Green, and I am half of a group for change, and I'm bringing you, that's right, you, another edition of the 100-Day Video Challenge, day 53. So you see the title is My Daddy Matters, and let me give you a bit of a background. I am, I'm Oliver Green, but I'm a third. So there's two others, one that's living, one that has passed away that I have never met. And for those that know him and know me, you look at both of us and he can't deny me, I can't deny him. It is what it is. But he did not raise me. My mom and dad divorced when I was 5, and I could give you the timeline of events, but it wasn't good. He was an in and out dad. That was around the time, hey Angela, that was around the time that I realized something was different. I went to private school. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 6th grade. And for the longest time, I thought Catholic school was free. I thought private school was free. I really did. Didn't know. Didn't really care to know. Wasn't supposed to know. But that was the arrangement between him and my mom. So my dad, I've always gone to predominantly white schools. I've always been a number at those schools. I don't have any real racial things to talk about. If things were said, it was never said to me. I had a lot of Caucasian friends growing up. Sometimes I chose to hang out with them opposed to hanging out with the friends that I grew up with in the area. And even that came with a consequence, a price. But so growing up, I was raised by my mom and my grandma. Many times that I went to see him or I waited, the typical kid that's waiting on the step for him to come. I wasn't on the step. I used to take a bus, an hour and a half, 2 hours to the city, get there, him not show up. You got a 12-year-old roaming around the city just so he didn't tell his mom. I get back on the bus and I just dealt with it. The times that he was there, I'd get picked up by one of his girlfriends, and they had me. I would see him, but I could do whatever I wanted to do because they had to make me happy because they didn't want to deal with him. And then after that visit was over, he would take me back to the bus station. I'd get $40, 2 pairs of sneakers, and a round trip ticket home. And that happened for years. And then it came a point in time that I didn't want to go anymore. Didn't like him. Didn't care. Mom had to make me call him. Some things happened in that time frame that just, it was what it was. But he wasn't there. In high school, he never came to any football games, no basketball games, no track meets. I had to force him to come to my graduation and bring me money for my class trip. I don't say this to boast. It was what it was. Being an only child, I was spoiled. I think I'm still spoiled. But it's gotten better because I have 4 kids. And anyway, relationship was never great. You can ask my family members, anybody that was close to me. Anything could have happened to him. I didn't care. He wasn't there for me. I didn't feel I had to be there for him. But it wasn't until he got diagnosed with cancer and throat cancer and was at the hospital, had the cancer removed, and just seeing him there was like, wow, he almost died. And that's not how my mom raised me. So the innate thing in me was to do what you're supposed to do. And I was there. And for him, that was a turning moment because he couldn't talk. So there wasn't any questions. He just was able to see me move. My stepmom was there, and her and I hadn't had the best relationship. I couldn't tell you why. But it was what it was. So we fast forward, and the relationship between him and I has not always been the best. It's still not the best today. There's days that I call him and I treat him like he that dude on the street. And there's other days that I call that I need him as my dad to give me advice. And there's other days that I call we just bust it up because I remember something. And he accepts it. So the topic is family matters, and my daddy does matter. A couple months ago, somebody asked, do you have a couple that has been married, like a married couple, to guide you that you could bounce things off? And I was like, nah, I don't know anybody. Marquita and I had a couple when we were in Tallahassee, but it didn't hit me. My dad called a couple weeks ago to remind me that his wedding anniversary was coming up. Well, I know it's coming up because it's in my phone, but I didn't know it was the 30th anniversary. He's been married 30 years. So I was like, wow, I did have somebody. Aside from him, I don't know anybody close to me that's been married for 30 years. Like, tangibly, that I could call and talk and just be me and not have to be phony, fake Oliver, or watch what it is that I say, Oliver, or I don't really want them to know too much about me, Oliver. No, I could be me. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. And when you're not you aren't able to really get the answers that you're looking for. But that's my opinion. So I did have somebody, and I had to call him, and I had to say thank you. And we had that conversation. But I had gotten to a place where I had to call him and ask him some questions. And the questions were, how come you didn't teach me? Why did you leave me? 1. He became defensive. 2, how come you didn't teach me how to be a man? 2. And out of that second question, the conversation goes on, and his response kind of like it bit. His response was, I couldn't teach you how to be something that I didn't know. Now, I was 46, so this happened earlier in the year. And he said he didn't learn it till he was 40. He's in his 60s. So, and whereas I thought I forgave him before for everything that has happened between the two of us, it wasn't until that moment where I had to apologize because I had to forgive him. I was like, I apologize. I thought that I forgave you, but I didn't. So I held him accountable. I held him accountable for not teaching me something that he couldn't teach because he didn't learn it. He didn't have it. He is the only boy. I think my grandpa passed. He couldn't have been any more than 5. And it's a whole bunch of women. And those that know my family, they're very dominant. They are. Any of them could watch. They are. They're all dominant. But again, it was at that moment where I was like, I apologize. And for the longest, I used the excuse when my dad wasn't around. But I had to get to a place where that crutch wasn't acceptable anymore. And I think a lot of times, especially men, we don't want to get to the root of why we do some of the things that we do because it hurts. And we're supposed to be strong, and we're not supposed to cry, and we're not supposed to show emotion. But if you don't do any of those things, where does it all go? It's bottled up. And if you have sons, you're teaching them because you're just going to regurgitate what it was that you figured out. If you have daughters, you're not teaching them to embrace their emotions. So you're starting that same cycle of not being in touch with your emotions all over again. So I say all that to say, my dad and I don't have the best relationship right now, but it is what it is. He's been married for 30 years. I do have an example. I can bounce questions off of him. And if nothing else, I was able to forgive. And before you can move on and have this big, happy, grandiose life, if you have a whole bunch of hurt in your heart because your parent, in particular, your dad, was not around, and he was able to be but wasn't, you got to get over that. You got to learn to forgive. Because if you don't, it's going to impede on what it is that you currently have and prevent you from moving forward in what your purpose truly is. And I can stop the video on that. But I will say that's where the daddy issues comes from. And I'll explain that more at a later time. But I found that daddy issues, they're there. And if you don't deal with your daddy issues will deal with you. But your daddy issues usually deal with you when you are when you're not ready to deal with those issues. And if you know anything about boxing, if your guard is down and that left hook comes, guess what? You're out. You have to stay equipped. You have to learn how to forgive. When you are able to be honest with you, it makes things go a whole lot smoother. I am Oliver Green, and I am half of a group for change, and I'm bringing you, that's right, you, another edition of the 100-Day Video Challenge, day 53.